Welcome back to Talk Show, the show where we tally the bananas so you don't have to. It was supposed to be Thursday, April 2nd. It's actually Friday, April 3rd. And the news was so wild that I actually had to bump this one back ever so slightly. Trump just recently threatened to pull the United States out of NATO because our allies won't help him fight his war, the Trump war. NATO, the defensive alliance that's kept us safe for 77 years, the alliance actually invoked Article 5 for us after 9/11, and that's the only time it's ever been invoked. This is the alliance that sent thousands of troops to Afghanistan alongside American forces, right? Now, Trump's calling it a paper tiger because they won't join his unauthorized war against Iran. Super. And he opened his recent primetime address to the nation the other night basically by congratulating NASA on the Artemis II launch, then spent the rest of his speech threatening war crimes. Outstanding. Some great priorities there. And boy, oh boy, surprise Bondi announcement. That's right, bad girl Bondi. She's being bounced all the way back to Florida. Another stupid alliteration that I hate. We'll talk more about that on Sunday, though. In the meantime, let's season this cast iron. In our first segment, yes, that's right, you heard me before, Trump has threatened leaving NATO, calling it a paper tiger. So on Tuesday, April 1st, not an April Fool's joke, sadly, Trump told The Telegraph, oh yes, I would say it's beyond consideration. I was never swayed by NATO. I always knew they were a paper tiger, and Putin knows that too, by the way. Remember that Putin reference? Then doubled down with Reuters, absolutely considering pulling the U.S. out of NATO. His reason, European allies refused to do some things. So here we go. They didn't allow U.S. aircraft to use their bases for offensive strikes on Iran. They judged it illegal because the war is illegal. That was correct. Number two, they did not send warships to patrol the Strait of Hormuz during an active war. And number three, they did not join his unauthorized military campaign. Trump said, they haven't been friends when we needed them. We've never asked them for much. It's a one-way street. Which, as we know, is bullshit. Senator Mark Warner's response, I think, sums it up nicely, saying, NATO was invoked for the first and only time after September 11th when our allies came to our defense. Thousands of allied troops served along American forces in Afghanistan, and many paid the ultimate price. To now call this alliance a one-way street isn't just wrong, it's an insult to those sacrifices. Now let's be clear. In case you don't know what NATO is, here's what it is. It was founded in 1949 after World War II. Article 5 basically says an attack on one member is an attack on all. It was only invoked one time. Remember, after 9/11, NATO has served for 77 years, keeping the peace between Europe and North America. That's great. That's useful. We've needed that. And now Trump's big mad because they won't help him prosecute an offensive war he started without congressional approval. And NATO is a defensive alliance. So that's not how this works. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on Monday said, if NATO is just about us defending Europe if they're attacked, but then denying us basing rights when we need them, that's not a very good arrangement. Cool, except, reminder, NATO is not supposed to help you invade other countries, Marco, my guy. That's the whole fucking point. Now, can Trump actually do this? Okay, so 2023 law, co-sponsored by Rubio, fun fact, President cannot withdraw from NATO without 2/3 Senate approval or an act of Congress. Okay, Trump's position, I don't need congressional approval. They can pound sand. The legal experts are murky on this. He'd have to claim commander-in-chief authority or cite national defense. There'd be lawsuits. Supreme Court would probably decide. And, since SCOTUS tends to rule in Trumpy Boy's favor like 90% of the time, I don't like the chances. Now, even if he can't formally withdraw, he could more or less make us quit NATO in all but name by refusing to participate, pulling funding, and maybe pulling troops from bases. International reaction to this, as you might suspect, all over the place. Finland's president said, constructive discussion, problems are there to be solved pragmatically. Estonia's foreign minister said, harmful. Poland's defense minister said, NATO is not a paper tiger. It's the most successful military alliance in modern history. Trump's threat is reckless, dangerous, and plays directly into the hands of our adversaries. Hold that as well. Remember the Putin remark. The UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said, NATO remains the single most effective military alliance the world has ever seen. And Trump, went ahead and mocked Britain's navy. You don't even have a navy. You're too old, and had aircraft carriers that didn't work, which is how Trump talks about our closest ally. Now, if you didn't pick up on the absurdity, let me spell it out for you. Trump is threatening to leave NATO, the alliance that protects us from Russia, while calling them a paper tiger, and then saying Putin knows that too. So Trump is agreeing with Putin's assessment of NATO and advertising that weakness to Putin while threatening to abandon the alliance. So whose side is he on? Wednesday night, Trump addressed the nation, opened it by congratulating NASA on the Artemis II, which is good news, and I'll talk about that shortly. He basically then claimed military objectives in Iran are nearing completion. Then said we'd bring them back to the Stone Ages in 2 to 3 weeks, which that doesn't sound like nearing completion. Then threatened to strike Iranian civil infrastructure. Reminder, this is a war crime. Then said there were talks with more reasonable Iranian leaders. Iran, of course, denies this. And lastly, made absolutely no mention of the NATO threat. How suspicious. Iran's response to all this, it's false and baseless. Iran's Revolutionary Guard specifically said the Strait of Hormuz is firmly under our control. It will not be opened through ridiculous spectacle by the President of the United States. And he is a ridiculous spectacle, isn't he? God, I hate it. So we're 1 month into Trump's war. He's threatening to leave NATO, claiming victory while deploying more troops, and our allies continue to make contingency plans in case we invade them next time. Oh boy. It's all fine. Like I like to say, it's all fine. In our next segment, the good news that I hinted at before, yes, let's talk about the Artemis II. There is spectacular social media stuff about this. It was beautiful. There's a reporter who got emotional watching it. Really, really cool stuff. So this was not a complete disaster. Wednesday, April 1st, 6:35 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, NASA launches Artemis II from the Kennedy Space Center. I cannot believe that hasn't been renamed to the Donald J. Trump Kennedy Space Center. 4 astronauts went up. It's amazing. They're going on a 10-day mission to fly around the moon. The first moon mission since 1972. That's right. The first time we've been going on a lunar voyage in many a year. This is the first time we've gone beyond low Earth orbit in over half a century. That's amazing. There's lots of firsts on this as well. So we've got Victor Glover, the first person of color to travel to the moon. Amazing. Christina Koch, first woman to travel to the moon. Also amazing. Big fan. Jeremy Hansen, the first non-U.S. citizen to travel to the moon. 3 really cool things to happen all at the same time. It's 10 days to the moon and back. There's a really cool slingshotty thing that they have to do in order to get there. On the trip, they'll do a few different things. So they're going to test Orion's life support systems with humans for the first time. Fingers crossed. Manually pilot proximity operations around spacecraft components. That sounds fancy. They'll conduct CPR demonstration in space because space CPR is different than Earth CPR. They'll also practice emergency spacesuit donning, don those spacey socks, and then take photos of the lunar flyby. All really cool. Interesting fun fact, there's only 1 toilet on board this mission. Mission Control confirmed this mid-flight. You are good to use the toilet all night. Glad we got that sorted out. Anyways, we're going back to the moon. That's super cool. The Artemis III mission will actually land astronauts on the lunar surface, and that's coming up in 2028. So we've got some really cool stuff. There's like a new era of space exploration finally happening. So congrats to NASA. Congrats to the Artemis II crew. Everybody who made this happen. At least something is going right. Outstanding. In our next segment, join me for world news in a minute. The Iran war hits day 33. High-level summary. Trump says nearing completion. Iran says no talks exist. And the war continues to expand. Oil, very expensive still. Strait, still closed. New deployment, another 2,500 Marines. Super. The Bravo Summer House scandal swoops in. Amazing. So West and Amanda had a cheating scandal. Fans are calling it Scandival 2.0. Very interesting. I don't know if you're familiar with that other show. Meanwhile, NATO's collapsing. We're threatening war crimes. But the good news is Bravo's giving us that real content. Department of Homeland Security shutdown, still unpaid, but we may be approaching a fix there. More on that coming soon. Supreme Court rejected the Colorado law banning conversion therapy for LGBTQ minors. Kind of a sad day. 20 plus similar states already have similar bans. If you're a football lover and not the silly American kind, Italy is out of the World Cup. They lost to Bosnia and Herzegovina in a penalty shootout. Third consecutive World Cup that Italy will miss. And the Italians are in shambles. And the last incredibly hilarious bit of World News in a Minute, Kristi Noem's husband was caught doing some wild shit. Daily Mail leaked some photos. South Dakotans feel bad for Byron Noem, I guess. And it's a bit of a rough week for the Noem household. Anyways, if you want to know more, you can go look that up. That's your world, somehow still turning. Now for our main story, let's get into this. I want to refresh and talk a little bit more about that NATO threat being a gift to Putin. Trump and NATO have had a bit of a rocky relationship for years, but this week, our allies caught Trump publicly flirting with Putin, calling NATO a paper tiger and threatening to leave. It's given that summer house, it's given that Scandival vibes for me, except instead of cheating on your partner with your roommate, Trump's cheating on a defensive alliance that protects us from Russia with Russia. At least Amanda found out from a hot mic. NATO unfortunately had to read about it in the Telegraph. Allow me to connect some of these dots. Trump threatens to leave NATO, calling it a paper tiger. Says Putin knows that too. Trump is undermining the alliance, publicly agreeing with Putin, broadcasting NATO's supposed weakness to the adversaries, and threatening to abandon 77 years of collective defense. It's a risky strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off, because our allies won't help him fight an offensive war he started without congressional approval that more than half of America opposes. 56%, last I checked. It's a gift to Putin. It's wrapped in a bow. What does Putin get from this? Here we go. NATO unity is shattered. European allies are scrambling. U.S. credibility is more or less destroyed. The transatlantic alliance is in question. Putin has wanted to weaken NATO for decades. Trump's basically doing it for free. Here's the kicker. Trump's doing this while we're at war with Iran, a conflict that has stretched U.S. military resources thin. It's also closed major oil choke points and left us with zero allied support. If Trump actually pulls out of NATO, Russia gets a free hand in Europe. Putin could move on the Baltics, could threaten Poland, could pressure Finland, and Article 5 wouldn't protect them anymore. China gets a weakened U.S. with broken alliances. Iran gets to watch the U.S. isolate itself while we're fighting a losing war. We, the Americans, get higher gas prices, fewer allies, and just a more dangerous world. Ha ha, America. Congress could stop this. Remember that 2023 law that I mentioned requires 2/3 Senate approval? But Trump doesn't care about laws. He'll claim executive authority, he'll fight it in courts, and then Supreme Court will just be like, you get this one for free. Chuck Schumer, you remember him, looks sort of like an ancient goblin. The Senate will not vote to leave NATO and abandon our allies just because Trump is upset they wouldn't go along with his reckless war of choice. Cool. Pass some legislation with teeth here, folks. Defund any NATO withdrawal attempt. Make it impossible. But they won't, because Republicans control Congress, and they've spent the last month proving they will not check Trump on Jack Diddley Squiddly. Here's the pattern, y'all. Denmark prepared to blow up Greenland runways to stop a U.S. invasion. European allies have refused to help with the Iran war. NATO members are distancing themselves. Our closest allies don't trust us anymore. And Trump's response is to threaten to leave the only alliance keeping the peace. If you learned something, I'm sorry. If you didn't, congratulations, you're coping correctly. I'm Tino. This was Talk Show. I'll see you on Sunday.